of a season that's sputtering its way out, and it was throw them out there. I'm telling you, make a few bucks off of the tickets because it's the last home game of the season. Make a few, but not the tickets as much as the jersey, and actually having bodies in the seats. Having a full stadium sells you more beers and all of that stuff. But it's not just that. It was all of those factors. Boom. But everybody in that organization knew. Mike Pettin knew. Everybody knew. There's a reason that the kid didn't play all season long. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said yesterday. You're not talking about a guy who needs a few weeks to develop. This is the equivalent of a high-level high school, college quarterback recruit. You know what I mean? Literally, that rudimentary of a level. This is a few years process just to build this kid up to perhaps being able to compete at the NFL level. And even then, the physical skills will still only be slightly above average. I'm just saying, you can look at reality, or we can live in this fantasy world, and we can spend 2 years in the Brandon Whedon fantasy all over again. And again, this is not to say, oh, well, one game, you throw the kid away. This is where I'm going back to what we were talking about yesterday. Absolutely not. It is to say, get your head out of the clouds and get them into reality. This is going to be pull up your bootstraps for the next couple of years and suffer through it if that's where you want to go, with no guarantee of any type of upside. I'm just saying. And that's where you go back now to what Bernie was saying. He brought up a couple of the stories that we've talked about, the homeless guy story that we joke about, the text message to the Browns that got them all fired up to go and draft Johnny in the first place, and all of that, and how those things shouldn't happen. And again, there's a portion of the fan base right now saying, J-Rock, Bernie's only saying that because he got fired. Bernie's only saying that because he doesn't work for the Browns anymore. And if he worked for the Browns, he'd think they were geniuses. I will say that when he worked for the Browns, Bernie Kosar didn't have a problem speaking his mind then. It's why some of the people on the Browns had a urge to make Bernie Kosar not work for the Browns anymore. I mean, he did other things too, but yeah, he didn't exactly endear himself to front offices over the years, which is one of the things that kept him out. And look, his word is not gospel. I'm not one of those guys either, man. I've told you guys, he is my absolute favorite Cleveland Browns player of all time. But I mean, you do have to look at everything. Some things are colored a bit in different circumstances, but here, much of what he is saying is right. Not all of it. He went very, very far to saying, not Mike Pettin, not the players. Those got a lot of guys. Hey, there's a lot of truth to that here. But at the end of the day, and this is what I was saying yesterday, even when Dan Wismar and I were going back and forth, about who knew what and who didn't about when they decided to make this quarterback change. At the end of the day, some people did, and somebody somewhere, Mayor Vic, as much as he argues back and forth, and boy, there were some conversations on our social media yesterday, but he brought up the same point as well, that regardless, too many people focus the heat and focus the attention on Hoyer, on Manziel, no, the focus needs to be on the people making those decisions. Here we go, I'll lay it out like this. This is my thoughts on how the drafting of Johnny Football affected the Browns organization for the next couple of years to come, because not only did it alter the way they went about the first round of last year's draft, they made decisions that they shouldn't have been making for reasons that they shouldn't have made them. It changed the way you handled the first round of last year's draft, so it affected 2 first-round picks there. It changed the dynamic. I don't care what you say about how Hoyer won the job and all of that. It doesn't matter. That whole circus environment that the Browns went through this whole season was all affected a part of it. I don't think, let's just put it this way, if John Manziel's not on this team, then I still think Hoyer and the Browns cap out at 8 or 9 wins. That period. And that's with everything going well and everything happening the way it did mixed in together. Regardless, I mean, that's not much different. That's not going off on a crazy limb or whatever. Point being, people, and then Dan and I talked about this yesterday, people look at that differently than they will now, the way this season ended. Because this season's coming out with the absolute stink of failure at the end of it. The first half of this season, the feeling good is so far removed from where people are going to come out of the end of this season. Because now you've tainted the new guy, too. Now the gig is just up. The jimmy's out on everybody now, and that's going to completely, which had to happen. Hey, man, people had to get reality slapped in their face here at some point, and they did. A big dose of it. Hey, so did Manziel, because that team did not come to play for him. You cannot stress that enough. That team did not come to play for him. Don't know if they're going to come to play for him this week or next week either. That team did not show up, and Johnny did not bring his invisible juice. If you've ever seen Any Given Sunday, then you know what that's a reference to. But anyways, yeah, that team did not show up for him. But even if they did, it doesn't matter. The level that we're at, you guys, let's be realistic here about this thing, man. But anyways, all of that ties in to what Bernie Kosar was talking about here. And like I said, you can't take every word that he says with truth, but you also can't just dismiss everything that he says as an axe being grounded, all of that. He made up a lot of points. And then going back to how this affects the Browns going forward, you've now come out of this season, both quarterbacks most likely blown out of the water. Now, really, to me, you're not deciding in the next 2 weeks if Manziel's your franchise. You're deciding how much more development, if you want to continue developing this guy, and what you think his ceiling is. We're not deciding if he's the franchise. We're simply deciding how much work we want to put into this. I mean, he's going to have to go out here and bust his ass for the next 2 weeks just to show this front office that there's anything there worth working on. If he shows a spark, not to be funny, if he shows a spark, if he shows anything, they'll cling on to that, and you'll hear for 6 months in the offseason, well, remember that one drive that he had in Carolina where they were moving the ball? Well, if we can just get him to do that for 16 games, we'll be all right. And if we, you know how, anyways, teams can talk themselves into giving guys another chance. We had to give Brandon Whedon another chance. So all he has to do is show anything, and he'll get that opportunity. He's going to come forward no matter what, but there's a difference between coming forward to be the man and coming forward just to be developed and hope to get something out of the investment of a first-round draft pick, because I truly believe internally that's where the Browns are at right here is, can he show us enough to continue to develop resources in this? Because otherwise, as I said, you're looking at a several-year process. How many of you guys are interested in that? Even with your number 2 jersey on, are you interested in a several-year process just to maybe end up with an NFL quarterback? And those were the things that we talked about from the beginning. There is no pleasure in any of this whatsoever, because I believe that this end of the season will go a long way to undoing some of the good things that started here, and whoever made some of these decisions, somebody's got to be accountable for this. If it turns out worst case scenario, and it turns out that what a lot of people think is the reality of the quarterback here, who made that call? Problem is that I think we all know who made that call, and none of them get a paycheck from the Cleveland Browns. The person who made that call is the person who owns the Cleveland Browns, and as we know, he doesn't have to answer to anybody. And that's the truth of it. That is the truth of it at the end of the day. I saw somebody in the paper today speculating that, Farmer got his draft pick, and Pettin got his defensive player, so Haslam got his quarterback, and he went and got his Johnny. Again, look, this is not to beat that horse. That kid has to start, and I got to give Mike Pettin credit. This was one of the questions I asked yesterday was, since the mantra all season long has been, who gives us the best chance to win? The Browns have to say tomorrow, which is yesterday, that he doesn't give us the best chance to win. We're just going to play him because we have to. And Mike Pettin was dead honest about that. They asked him yesterday. They said, hey, Mike, does he give you the best chance to win? He goes, no, I can't say that, but he's going to play anyway. And I'll tell you what, that hurts. For those of you out there that want to just destroy any of the body of work that Brian Hoyer did, which is fine. That's your right to do it. Your coach blatantly said yesterday that Brian Hoyer remains the best quarterback on this team. And that's not to advocate Hoyer. I'm not. Guys, I'm not advocating Hoyer. I'm saying, what does that tell you about where we're starting from? Yes, it can get there, but this was, Dan Wismar put it best yesterday, a gimmick. a gimmick that was exposed for what it was. We'll talk about this some more as we roll on here a little bit later on in the show with Dr. Football. I know I'm up against the break. I got Jeff Gorman coming. I want to talk some Cavaliers here, some Cavs hoops. I'll tell you what, they should have let the Browns borrow a couple of those touchdowns that they started out with yesterday. All right, you know what? I'll mention it real quick. We'll get to some Cavs deep in depth a little bit later on the show. For those of you guys that missed it last night, Cavaliers got healthy at the hands of the Charlotte Hornets. They was a lot closer than it needed to be. Come down the stretch, Charlotte had some fight in them, but how about the start to that game, guys? Cavaliers rolled out to a 21-0 lead last night against the Hornets. Here's how that thing started. Kevin Love, jumper. Varejao, jumper. Free throws for Love. Three-pointer for Love. Varejao. Irving, three-pointer. Love, three-pointer. 2 LeBron James free throws, 11 baskets, 11 assists to start the game for the Cavaliers. That's the kind of ball movement that you like to see out of this kind of an offense, and that's obviously what David Blatt wants. Now, I'm not, sitting here getting all crazy. It was the Hornets, and we talked about the struggles that they've had coming into this game. We were just mentioning that yesterday. That's why this was a perfect game for them to get out there and feel better about themselves at. LeBron with his buddy Warren Buffett in the crowd, one billionaire to another. They're out there. Well, one future billionaire anyway. Listen, man, I think technically LeBron James is a billionaire. He may not have $1 billion, but you got to think that his brand value, clearly you know that he's heading that way. But anyways, Warren Buffett, so awesome to see him out there too. He didn't even have like the big expensive Cavs jersey. He had like the $39.99 press on from Walmart, the average Joe jersey on, and but he's there. It's just a great picture of this very, very old, octogenarian is the word I'm looking for, basketball fan billionaire and his buddy LeBron watching the game together at the end. Good stuff. But anyways, the Cavs played last night. LeBron, 13 assists, dished the ball very well. That's the game I like to see him play. But the period starting the game, 11 for 11. The first 11 baskets, you had assists on every one of them. That is that high level of offensive efficiency that we've talked about, you guys. Kevin Love, as well as LeBron, came up big last night. Kyrie Irving threw in 16. Big Al Jefferson, I told you guys, I love Big Al. Al Jefferson, 14 for Charlotte. Kemba Walker, 24 points. I like Kemba Walker, man. I do. I like he's a developing young point guard there. I know for a couple of years, Vashon in the chat room used to go back and forth about him and Kyrie Irving there, but he's a good little point guard for those guys. But the Cavs did what they had to do. This is what you needed to do. As I said, they let it get a little closer than they needed to. Every team in the NBA makes a run. Charlotte made a run, but behind LeBron's 27, 13 assists, Kevin Love, 22 and 18. Kevin Love has really been getting himself warmed up here with these double-doubles as well. Cavs got healthy last night to start this 5-game homestand as they won that one going away 97-88. Charlotte now drops to 6-18 on the season. Cavs improved to 14-9. They've got a day off before they get back at it tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I'll talk some more hoops too. Vikings win last night. Everybody feeling better playing some basketball. We'll talk some more hoops later on. We've got Dr. Football coming on, but let's get rolling. Let's get this first break out of the way. Get my man Jeff Gorman on the phone. From I see comments coming in about Manziel and Bernie and all of that. Yeah, we'll talk about that some more here too. Dr. Football's coming up, but coming up next, Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com. We'll talk a little hot stove here going on as the winter time continues. It's one of my, it's my second favorite time of the baseball season after the actual baseball season. I don't know. But we're going to talk about it with Jeff Gorman when we come back. Dr. Football still to come. I'll open up the phones and more. Keep the conversation going on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE when we come back. Talking a little tribe with Jeff Gorman of Indians101.com. Coming up next here on The Fix.
Gotta make it happen. Come on, Cavs. Gotta make it happen. Come on, Cavs. Gotta make it happen.
The Sports Fix, the show that asks the question,
What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou? talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
We'll be right back.
Sports Fix listeners, you've heard me talking about it. Millionaires being made all season long at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. I've been playing there too. It's now J-Rock's favorite one-week fantasy football site. What's one-week fantasy football? That means no season-long commitments. Play whenever you want. Have a player